Mic set. Alright, guys, what's going on? Welcome to Saturday Night Selections Week 5. A little bit of similar lineup to last week. I'm just going to change the formatting a little bit so maybe it's a little bit easier to see and kind of differentiate the different tiers. So, we do running backs 1 through 36 as well as wide receivers, but we'll have them on different slides this time. Just make it a little easier visually. Got your stardoms, positions 1, 2, and 3, so someone from each tier for both the running back and wide receiver position. And then you got your sit-ups, 2 players on the running backs, 2 players on the wide receivers out of those top 36 that might not have the best week. If you don't have anybody else to play, you're still going to play them, but just know that they might not have the best week, right? They're not going to have that pop-off week that's going to win you the league, or that week. Rookie of the week still. We are 30-second salaries, where we go through some of the FanDuel bets and lines that they have for this week. And then I want to go through and do a quick review of like the game spreads to see which ones are favorable. We're taking the underdogs, we're taking the overdogs. Does that spread look right? And then fantasy feedback. If you guys want any feedback on your leagues, have any questions of who you should start in certain positions, feel free to reach out, and I'll get to it at the end and kind of go over them and kind of provide some feedback. So we'll do that at the end if you guys are interested. So, starting off with our running backs tier 1s, we have Saquon Barkley at the top. You see Green Bay. You have Nick Chubb against the Chargers at 2. Derrick Henry versus Washington at 3. Austin Eckler versus Cleveland. Christian McCaffrey versus San Francisco. Dalvin Cook versus Chicago. Aaron Jones versus the Giants. Leonard Fournette at Atlanta. Joe Mixon versus Baltimore. Jamal Williams versus New England. Alvin Kamara versus Seattle. And to round off your tier 1 running backs, you have James Robinson at Houston. So this one's a little bit different format. You can see overall, this is what the players ranked for that week. So between their, their performance so far in the year, their matchup, their point projection, they get a letter grade. So everyone in the tier 1 is going to be your A's, your A plus, A minus. And then these are the projected points in a PPR format. So if you're non-PPR, just know these might be a little bit lower, but this is the PPR format projection. So Saquon Barkley coming in about 2 points above everybody else. So solid steal in the second round if you got him. Jump into tier 2. We have Josh Jacobs versus Kansas City, Miles Sanders versus Arizona, Dameon Pierce versus Jacksonville, Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Las Vegas, Jeff Wilson Jr. versus Carolina, Ramondre Stevenson versus Detroit, Najee Harris versus Buffalo at 19. He's dropped a ton, his first round pick. People were picking him, towards the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. And we know he had a bit of a slow start, and he's just been continuously dropping, and he's down to 19 over, the likes of Ramondre Stevenson, who has a split backfield. So kind of concerning. I know it's a super tough matchup versus Buffalo as well, so that doesn't help. But hopefully they'll find some footing with Kenny Pickett stepping in. I think it's going to be a better offense, but it might take a couple weeks for it to start clicking. And Buffalo being your first, full week's matchup is not ideal. So we'll see how that goes, especially being in Buffalo might be a little bit tough one there. Dameon Harris versus Detroit at 20. Khalil Herbert, because you have Montgomery out, versus Minnesota at 21. We know Nyheim Hines played Denver already on Thursday, was concussed 3 plays in, and did not play very much. So hopefully he recovers well. Melvin Gordon also played on Thursday in that abysmal game. They played, of course, against Indy. Did not perform up to 12 points, so a little disappointing there. And then James Conner at Philly with a really tough matchup, rounding out your tier 2 running backs. So tough one there. Tier 3 running backs. You got J.K. Dobbins versus Cincinnati, Breece Hall versus Miami, Devin Singletary at Pittsburgh. He's been kind of creeping up the rankings a little bit. Ever since, I think, week 3, he's just exploding in the passing game, which is super great, especially in that PPR format, where they're getting 7-8 receptions in a game. Just blows out of proportion. So I like to see that. A.J. Dillon at 28 versus the Giants, Kareem Hunt versus the Chargers, Ezekiel Elliott versus the Rams, Rashad Penny at New Orleans had a huge monster game against Detroit. Seems like they give up a lot of rushing yards. So hopefully the Patriots will take advantage of that this week. Antonio Gibson versus Tennessee. Travis Etienne Jr. versus Houston. Raheem Mostert versus the Jets. Tyler, butcher this name, Algier. He's the backup for Cordero Patterson out of Atlanta. He's playing against Tampa Bay, ranked 3 defense, so it might be a little tougher for him to get his first full start there. But hopefully he does well. Had a pretty good fill-in last week, so look to pick up off the waivers. Might not start him this week, but next week will probably be a little bit better considering Patterson's on IR, so he's going to be out for quite a few weeks. And Tony Pollard to round out the Tier 3 running backs at 36 versus the Rams. So glad the format is better. Tried to make it a little bit more visually appealing and not so cluttered. So spacing them out a little bit here. Let's see, anything here? Yes, I know Najee is getting a lot of heat, but I mean he's got to step it up before we stop giving him the heat. So On to wide receivers rankings, the Halloween edition. The man who's getting 17, 19 targets a week, Cooper Kupp, has got to be at the top of the list. It's going against Dallas. Dallas is a pretty stout defense, but if Matt Stafford only throws one person the ball and both his running backs are trash, he's going to get crazy points every week. So he's projected 23 points, so over 2 points above the next person. It's just actually outrageous. Stephon Diggs versus Pittsburgh. Still tough matchup, but should still do well. Justin Jefferson at 3 versus Chicago. Devontae Adams versus Kansas City at 4. Jamar Chase versus Baltimore at 5. Tyreek Hill versus the Jets at 6 if he plays. He's questionable right now, so I think it's a game time decision. So hopefully he's in there. A.J. Brown at 7 versus Arizona. Mike Evans versus Atlanta at 8. Deebo Samuel versus Carolina. T. Higgins also questionable at Baltimore, so hopefully he's good. I think he had that concussion last week. Or 2 weeks ago, rather. CeeDee Lamb versus the Rams at 11. And Christian Kirk still sneaking in the Tier 1 wide receivers at 12. Going against a pretty poor Houston defense, so he should have a pretty big week as well. Tier 2s. Jalen Waddle, also questionable. A lot of questionable wide receivers kind of closing into the hour right before they're setting up their lineups. Playing the Jets at 13. Cortland Sutton already played on Thursday. I think he had 12 points, so a little bit below projections. No one did well in that game at all. The only one that did good is their defense, maybe some kickers. That's where you're only getting some points. That was a horrible game as far as offense is considered. Marquise Brown at 15 going against Philly. A awful matchup for Hollywood Brown. But we'll see how he does. Mike Williams at 16 versus Cleveland. Chris Godwin at 17 versus Atlanta. Michael Pittman Jr. versus Denver, like we said, played on Thursday, did horrible as well. Chris Olave versus Seattle. DK Metcalf versus New Orleans at 20. So those guys back-to-back are playing each other. Should be an exciting game, that Seattle-New Orleans game. Drake London versus Tampa Bay at 21. Brandon Cooks at Jacksonville. Deontay Johnson versus Buffalo at 23. And rounding it out in Tier 2 is Amari Cooper at the Chargers. Amari Cooper's actually been connecting very well with Jacoby Brissett. Had a slow start, I think weeks 1 or 2. And then after that, it's been putting up 100 yards and a touchdown with 8 receptions, almost back-to-back games. So, crushing it over there in the Browns. I think the rush between Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb's opening that gap for them. And Njoku stepping back up to Donovan Peoples-Jones kind of stretching that field and letting Amari Cooper get those kind of inside targets. So, good on them. And our Tier 3 wide receivers, we got Terry McLaurin versus Tennessee, Tyler Lockett at New Orleans, Devontae Smith versus Arizona, Jerry Jeudy played, once again, not as good. At Indianapolis, Curtis Samuel at Tennessee, Romeo Doubs at 30 versus the Giants, you got Adam Thielen at Chicago, Gabe Davis versus Pittsburgh, Garrett Wilson versus Miami at 33, Juju Smith-Schuster versus Las Vegas, Allen Lazard versus the Giants at 35, and to round it out on your Tier 3s, you have Robert Woods versus Washington. So nothing too spectacular in this Tier 3 bracket, but all pretty consistent here. in the 14 or 12 to 14 point range. So hopefully get a few points out of them, put them in a flex slot if you have one, or if you have a league with 3 wide receivers, hopefully you have one of these wide receivers or someone better to fill the gap in. On to our stardoms. We got Lenny Fournette in your running back 1. And this is for 2 reasons. One is last week the game script did not suit him very well. That Kansas City Tampa Bay game was a shootout for the beginning, and the Bucks kind of fell behind the 8 ball. So they were passing the whole time. You can see they only had 3 rushing attempts for -3 yards, so not a stellar game on the ground. But you see on the receiving end, he had 7 receptions for 57 yards and a touchdown. So that receiving upside gave him 18 points last week. And they're going into a Falcons matchup where they should absolutely smash them, right? If the Falcons on the offense don't have Kyle Pitts and they don't have Cordell Patterson. So they should be playing, the Bucks should be ahead most of this game. It'll be that revenge game, coming off 2 straight losses to Green Bay and to Kansas City. They need to make a statement and need to get back into lead for the division. So I feel Bucks smash this game. Leonard Fournette gets actually a rushing touchdown for once, but he might add 1 receiving too. We'll see. We can see his receiving's been going up the last couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll continue to see that as well in week 5. Starter running back number 2, Josh Jacobs. So I sold on Josh Jacobs last week, I'll admit it. I thought Josh Jacobs into Denver was a horrible matchup, and on paper it is. But that's why we play the games every week, because not every game is on paper. You had Josh Jacobs rushing 28 times, which is almost more than he rushed against Tennessee and Arizona combined. And he got 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. So a lot of this was just pure volume, right? He's averaging, 4.8 overall, but the first couple of weeks, 5.1 yards, 3.6 in a bad game to Arizona, and then 5.7 to the Chargers. So his average was not anywhere out of the normal, but he had 28 carries, so he's going to get that volume. He's going to find the end zone. And he also had, identical back-to-back weeks at 5 receptions, 31 yards, so you're adding 8 points in the receiving aspect to a running back who's already getting, 26 points. So I don't think you're going to have another 34-point week out of Josh Jacobs, but I do think you have at least a 20-point week out of Josh Jacobs, so I like him. He's going to be a solid high-tier running back 2, maybe low-tier running back 1 if this progression continues, right? He's kind of each week he's stepping up, ramping up. So hopefully they continue to use him. I think Devontae Adams, like I said, stretches that field as well. Matt Collins getting involved. Darren Waller's non-existent, but maybe he's doing that blocking that they need to get the run game going. So we're taking Josh Jacobs in running back 2 slot. And this one's a little interesting, right? Mixing things up. We got Raheem Mostert in your running back 3 slot, which is crazy because the whole year Chase Edmonds has been your running back 1 for the Dolphins until last week. So last week they played Cincinnati Bengals. Raheem Mostert had 15 carries for 69 yards, so nothing outstanding. But Chase Edmonds only had 5 carries. So they are switching up this backfield. You have Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback now, with Tua out for who knows, maybe the whole season, maybe forever, unfortunately. Hopefully it's not the case. Hopefully he's healthy enough to play, but we'll see how those concussions protocol goes. There's a lot of investigation, a lot of back and forth with that, so just hoping he's good. But you have Tua out. You have Jalen Waddle questionable. You have Tyreek questionable. So you have your 2 best wide receivers that are banged up. Might make it, might not. And you have Chase Edmonds, who's losing the backfield to Raheem Mostert. So why not throw Raheem Mostert in there as a flex against a really bad Jets team? I think, it's kind of one of those sleeper picks for this week. It might be maybe one of those week winners for you. Going forward, I don't know how it changes. I don't know if Raheem Mostert continues to lead that backfield. I think we'll have to see kind of a week by week on how that goes. What's up, Chuck? But yeah, you can see down here, the carries is just night and day. Chase Edmonds 1.2 yards per carry versus a nearly 4.5 for Raheem Mostert. So I'm taking Mostert. Like I said, if you have a 3 running back slot league, or if you have a league with a flex slot, you need somebody in there, slot them in. On to our wide receivers. Now, Ja'Marr Chase has been underwhelming. First week of the season, he looked like prime Ja'Marr Chase from last year. 10 receptions, 16 targets, 129 yards, and a touchdown, right? Beautiful line. And then he goes to Dallas and kind of blows chunks, right? Rough matchup with Dallas. Goes against a weak Jets defense. Does okay, 6 receptions, only 29 yards, but the 1 touchdown saves that week. And then Miami, I think his biggest reception was a 36-yarder from a different wide receiver. I think it was T. Higgins threw it to him, or Tyler Boyd actually threw the pass. So they were a little bit off sync, but this Ravens defense gave up, 6 touchdowns one week, gave up 4 touchdowns another week. They are not good in the secondary, and I think this is the week where the Bengals wide receivers can actually pop off. So he only got targeted 4 times last week? 6 times. 6 times last week, with 4 receptions, where T. Higgins got 9. But you could see in the Dolphin scheme, they were double or triple covering him with the safeties, the linebacker, the corner. They were all over Ja'Marr Chase. They did not want to get him going. I feel like the Ravens kind of swapped that a little bit and start guarding T. Higgins a little bit more, and that opens some opportunities for Ja'Marr Chase. So we're with Ja'Marr Chase to have a big bounce back week this week against the Ravens, which should be a really fun, exciting game. It's a Sunday night game, so should be a good one. This guy is it's like a kryptonite. Some weeks you love him, and other weeks you hate him. I mean, you can see down here in the stat lines, right? First week, abysmal. Week 2, oh my God, he's your savior. Week 3, abysmal again, and then week 4, lights it up. So he's very on and off. But you have no Keenan Allen. Browns have a pretty good rush defense, so they're going to be looking to pass the ball a lot. And the thing I like the most, you can see here, this is the offensive snaps and their usage of the snaps. So these are all the skill position players. And you see Mike Williams is at 93%. He's 23% above the next closest skill position player on snaps. Is there a team that still has no wins? Yes, the Texans. The Texans are 0-3-1. They have a tie to Indy in week 1. It was Las Vegas last week until they actually beat Denver. So, yeah, Vegas is 1-3, and the Texans are 0-3-1. So, it's actually been a very, very competitive season. There's only one team that's undefeated. The Eagles are 4-0, and the Texans are the only winless team. They have a tie with us at Indy, but it's very, very close most of these games. There's been no crazy, really blowouts. Even the high-scoring games are like a 45-48 game last week with Seattle and Detroit. Like these are shootouts, but they're all relatively close. I think this game down here is actually one of the biggest blowouts. Here was 2 weeks ago, Jacksonville versus the Chargers, 38-10. Wasn't that a record? I know it was a scoregami, so I don't think there's ever been another NFL game that was 48-45. I don't know if it was the highest points ever scored, but 93 is just actually outrageous. Yeah, I think Detroit's averaging 35 points a game, and they have the worst defense in the league. So, they're number 1 offense, number 32 defense. They got one side of the ball working, they have to figure out the other side. But back to Mike Williams, right? He's on and off, but you have no Keenan Allen. Gerald Everett's kind of getting moving. Austin Eckler is getting moving good now too, which is awesome because it opens up that pass game, right? If they have no rush game, they're just doubling up on Mike Williams. But now they have to have someone following Eckler on all these screen passes, all these rushing attempts. I think it opens up Mike Williams a little bit, and I think they have a big week against the Browns this week. It should be a morning game tomorrow, so hopefully we'll see it bright and early. We'll see Mike Williams' names up in lights as he's catching some tutties. And then week Or wide receiver 3, we have Terry McLaurin. So he was one who was on our sits last week, and for good reason. He didn't do super great. You see, he had 2 receptions for 15 yards, so we were pretty spot on there. You don't think you want to start someone with 3.5 points, so good call there. But the story's a little different this week for 2 reasons. One, they're not playing Dallas or Philly. I mean, for the matchup in Philly, they actually did really, really well, considering how good Philly's defense is, especially their pass defense. But this matchup against the against the Titans, they don't have a good pass defense. They have Jahan Dotson, who's out, the rookie, who's got 4 touchdowns this year, is kind of scavenging all the touchdowns as a rookie. He's tied for first in the league. So somebody has to catch these touchdowns. So it's either Terry or Curtis Samuel is going to have a big week. So just depending on who gets open, how the matchups work. But I feel like Terry's going to kind of break out this week. He's done well in matchups that he should do well in, and this is another one that he does well in. So we're taking Terry in wide receiver 3 slot or flex slot. First kickoff is actually, there's a London game tomorrow, 6:30 PST. I don't know what time it is in London, but 6:30 PST is the first game with London. It's Green Bay and somebody else. I don't know. But then the first session of games after that is the 10 o'clock games, PST, or 1 o'clock on Eastern. Yeah, they played last week in London. It was New Orleans and actually this week is Green Bay and the Giants. Last week it was New Orleans and Vikings. So yeah, they're trying to branch out and get other countries, continents involved in NFL, which would be crazy one day if the NFL expanded into other continents, other countries. It'd be really exciting to see what if a British team or a German team or something comes down. That'd be pretty sick. I know they also have games where they go down to Mexico City, and play down there. So they're definitely expanding. It's a little different, but I mean, you saw the crowd. They were going crazy over there, especially for kicking. It was funny when they were doing the field goals. The whole London crowd was going wild. I think it's got that soccer, that football influence over there. But it was fun to watch because there were some crazy kicks in that game. The hard part was one of the Vikings safeties broke his leg out there, so he had to get surgery in London before he even flew back. So I have no idea how that works. I don't know what the insurance, I don't know what anything is like over there. So hopefully he was good. I mean, I'm not sure if he stayed by himself or what happened, but you're in a different country trying to get surgery until you can fly back. So that's the weird part, I guess, about it. But it's still really cool, and I think it's a pretty good thing for the company and for kind of getting the NFL out there. But on to our sit-em running backs. So these 2 guys, James Conner, I don't think is a big surprise. He hasn't really been putting up insane numbers this year. His attempts aren't crazy high. His yards aren't very good. He's been kind of splitting time with Eno Benjamin, who's actually might be getting more points than him these days. And last year he split time with Chase Edmonds until Chase Edmonds got hurt. Then he blew up and he got way more points than he should have because of the touchdown attempts he was getting. He was getting all these, goal line attempts, and he ended up with 16 touchdowns last year, which is probably 8 more than he should have. So I think he was just a little bit overvalued coming into this year. But going against the Eagles' defenses, their defense is not allowing points besides, week 1 versus Detroit. But even then, they are crushing teams. They had a strong Jacksonville matchup last week where they started slow, 14-0 start in favor of Jacksonville, but they came back and kind of put the kibosh on that. So I feel like you had to sit James Conner this week into the Eagles. And our second running back we have is Najee Harris. And we talked about him a little bit earlier. But you have Pittsburgh going into Buffalo. They're 14-point underdogs. They have a rookie quarterback, Kenny Pickett, who, in all reality, is better than Mitchell Trubisky, at least in my eyes. He had 3 interceptions on the stat line last week, but 2 of them bounced off their wide receiver's hands into the other defender. Not his fault. And the last one was a Hail Mary, the last play of the game. So you can't really break him for it. Every other pass he threw was a completion to his team. So with that being said, I'm taking Kenny Pickett over Mitchell Trubisky any day. He's taking shots Trubisky wouldn't. He's more accurate, and he's getting other players involved. George Pickens saw a huge role increase once Kenny Pickett came in. And I don't think that's going to go away. I feel like, you might have George Pickens stepping up into that wide receiver 1 slot over Deontay Johnson, who's been less than underwhelming this year. But Najee Harris going into the Bills, it's not a good game script for them. They're probably going to be behind, with that 14-point deficit kind of hanging over their head already. Everyone thinks they're going to be behind going into the Bills Mafia Stadium. They're going to have a little bit of a rough time. So this week, Najee Harris, it's hard to sit Najee Harris, right? You paid a round 1 draft capital or maybe early round 2 at best, depending on how many people are in your draft or in your league. But if you have somebody better, in all reality, I'm playing Raheem Mostert over Najee Harris. I know that sounds insane, but I'm doing it. I'm paying, it's Josh Jacobs, of course. I think there's probably a good 20 to 25 running backs I play over Najee Harris, if you give the option. So, take it as you will. If you have some questions about who you should play, let me know. I'll be answering them at the end as well. And then our wide receivers. So, also another Cardinals wide receiver here. Going into the Eagles matchup, the Eagles secondary is insane. The harder part with the Cardinals is they only have one really solid wide receiver right now until D-Hop comes back, right? Marquise Brown is getting anywhere from 11 to 17 targets a game, right? The ball's going his direction almost every time it's a pass play. So the defense is just doubling up on him. So he's not going to be able to continue this, especially when a solid Eagles defense, who's seen the scheme through the first 4 weeks, they're not going to allow him to continue doing that. They're going to have someone sitting on Ertz, they're going to have someone on Brown, and then they're going to have nowhere else to go. You have Rondale Moore, you have, I don't know who else is the wide receiver over there, but until D-Hop comes back to at least draw some of that attention away, I feel like he doesn't have a good week this week against the Eagles. And then Allen Lazard, the Giants. So Allen Lazard, I just feel like he's not connecting well with Aaron Rodgers for how long he's been there, right? He should be the veteran. But you have people like Romeo Doubs stepping up and as a rookie, kind of commanding that receiver core. You have Robert Tonyan at tight end, who's still doing a fantastic job. Not putting up crazy number. It's no TJ Hawkinson, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews type tight end, but enough to control the game, to get first downs, and to continue pushing the ball forward. But Green Bay is a running back oriented team right now. Without Devontae Adams, without a clear-cut wide receiver 1, they're going to the running backs, whether that's a ground game, whether that's screen passes. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are the ones pushing the ball. And Aaron Rodgers is just orchestrating it, just mixing it up between whether they're calling a rush play or a pass play. It's going to the same 2 people anyway. So, with that being said, going into the Giants, this is the London game at 6:30 in the morning, so you guys can tell me bright and early if I was wrong. But I think you sit Allen Lazard this week at the Giants until he has that breakout, that true, wide receiver 1 at Green Bay. I'm more confident in Romeo Doubs this week than Allen Lazard, but I guess we'll see tomorrow morning how that pans out. And Rookie of the Week, this was a close one. So there was 2 people I was kind of considering. Oh, 1 second. All right, we had a guest. Yeah, we painted pumpkins tonight. So he was wondering if they were dry. I said, "Well, not till tomorrow." We got an Iron Man pumpkin and we got a Mario pumpkin. So we got the cool ones. But back to this, we got Rookie of the Week. So this was two people that we were going through: Chris Olave and Drake London. And I feel like I've been talking about these guys back and forth the last 3-4 weeks. I mean, both of them have been killing it. But the reason I went with Chris Olave was because Michael Thomas is out. Michael Thomas is out, and he's the one that's kind of getting those touchdown looks. And we can see even last week versus Minnesota, even on his 7 targets, he kind of scavenged that short little 4-yard touchdown. That he has him again. He's been getting these crazy air yards. Let me see if I have it pulled up here, right? Air yards 2022. So this is a crazy stat. Basically, it's how many yards the ball's gone when it's intended for a specific person. So, let me show you this. Air yards. So, this is sorted by wide receivers, highest to lowest. You see Chris Olave has had 673 air yards the first 4 weeks, so that's how many yards that they're trying to throw the ball to him. The next closest person is Tyreek Hill at 453. He's over 200 yards above the next person. So he's getting all these crazy attempts, right? These balls are going to connect eventually. They had James Winston was getting on the same page with him right before that. He had 4 back fractures. So they threw in Andy Dalton. And even Andy Dalton kind of right away connected with him on a couple of these shorter routes. But I feel like with Michael Thomas out, Jarvis Landry's kind of questionable. He's been in and out. But him, Juwan Johnson, Jarvis Landry, they're going to kind of spread the field apart and give Chris Olave a couple shots, especially against a poor Seattle defense. Seattle's defense is not good, and hopefully Chris Olave will be able to expose that, break off some big plays. I'm hoping Chris Olave hits 50 or 60 yard touchdown this week on one of those big breakthroughs. But that's just a quick stat to show you guys. I mean, there's some crazy ones here. You have CeeDee Lamb, even with Cooper Rush, getting 440 air yards. So still doing really well. A.J. Brown going over to the Eagles. Everyone was a little bit concerned with that, with Jalen Hurts kind of being the one that's rushing, scrambling. But it's been working out fantastically for that Eagles offense. Is just dangerous everywhere. They're dangerous on the ground. They're dangerous in the air. So really stout team this year. But Chris Olave, Michael Thomas hurt, going against a bad Seattle defense. The other side of it was the Drake London side, with Kyle Pitts hurt and Cordell Patterson on IR. Someone needs to get the yards. The thing that scares me is that Marcus Mariota had 7 completed passes last week. No one's going to be productive if you can only complete 7 passes in an entire game. So unless they can fix his accuracy, and going against Tampa Bay, which is a pretty tough defense, I don't know if they do that, at least this week. But depending on how long these injuries linger, maybe the following week, you have a huge week for Drake London, but he's still a must start, regardless of who the quarterback is. They need someone to produce on offense, and Drake London's right there, right? He's the wide receiver 1, clear cut. We just hope that the line can protect Mariota enough for him to get the ball, and that he's accurate enough to make it worthwhile. But we went with Chris Olave this week. I think he's in a better offensive situation and is playing against a worse defense. So Olave over London this week. 30-second salary. So this is the part where I warn you guys that this is betting at the end of the day. If you don't feel like gambling, you don't have to. This is totally up to you. But if you're going to gamble, whether it's for entertainment, if you think you make a profit, it's all up to you. But just make sure if you're willing to bet something, you're willing to lose it. So with that being said, these are my more confident, confirmed locks here on the side, where we look at the spreads. All right. Los Angeles Chargers are 1.5 point favorites against the Cleveland Browns, which I think is too small of a spread. Los Angeles got embarrassed by Jacksonville last week, but they're not a bad team. They had a bad week. They are going to come back with a vengeance, and they are going to run and stomp through the air, through the ground, all over Cleveland. Even at Cleveland, it doesn't make a difference. I mean, Justin Herbert is a warrior. I mean, he was putting out there with cracked, fractured ribs. He's going to go out there and he's going to ball out every week. So I'm taking Chargers at 1.5. Philadelphia Eagles negative 5.5 point favorites at Arizona. For some reason, the Cardinals always play worse at home. I'm not sure if it's Kyler playing too much video games, but Philly's been on a tear. They have a mission. They've been tearing out every good team in the league. They don't care who they're facing. Even Jacksonville, they started slow, but they brought it back, and they dominated the game outside of the first 10 minutes. First 10 minutes was all Jacksonville, and then after that, Jacksonville didn't have a chance. So I'm taking Philly 5.5. My first underdog, Cincinnati versus Baltimore. Even at Baltimore, Cincinnati's a 3.5 point underdog, but it's gonna be a close game, right? The Ravens have only trailed for a total of 14 seconds this year, and they're 2-2. So all of their games have been hyper close, within a field goal, right? So if you're within a field goal, that's less than 3.5. So with that being said, I'm taking Cincinnati. They started off slow, but they picked up pace. 2-2 now, I believe. Going into the Ravens came off a heartbreaker loss to the Bills. The coaching staff on the Ravens is not super confident in their players for some reason. And they have Rashad Bateman out too, which is their number one wide receiver. So for all those reasons, I'm taking Cincinnati 3.5. I don't know if they win the game, but I know they're not going to lose by more than 3. So going there. And the Washington Commanders, 1 point favorite at Chicago. And it says Thursday night. Oh, maybe that's the following week. It totally is. Wow, I was looking at FanDuel. That's an early preview. Don't look at that one for this week. Just cross it out. That'll be next week's game. So let's move on from that. But early look, we're taking Washington in that game heavy. The Bears are awful. Their offense is awful. Washington's not great, but they're better than awful. So I'm taking Washington -1 on that week for next week. Not week 5. That'll be week 6. And then our same game parlay, we have to look at our New England Lions game. Not just because I'm a Lions fan. Oh my God! Not because I'm a Patriots fan, but because this is the game that no one knows what's going to happen. I feel like Detroit's been putting up 35 points a game, and New England's not been allowing that many points in any game. Right? They have that defense that's kind of keeping them tight with their offense kind of falling apart. They're on their third string quarterback with Bailey Zappi. But the bet I like here is using the alt rushing, right? So the actual rushing over-unders are like anywhere in the 55s to 65s. But if you do the alt rushing props, and keep those at 40 yards and do the over on Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, Jamal Williams, I think those are your safest bets, and that's where the free money's at. If you want to take those 3, lock them in. I don't think the odds are super crazy, but you're going to make money. Those 3 are going to run the ball over and over and over. Jamal Williams is the only good running back in Detroit right now with DeAndre Swift hurt. And we have a third string quarterback on the side of the Patriots. Bailey Zappi, sorry. But with that being said, Devontae Parker and Jacoby Myers are both in this week. And Devontae Parker had 100 yards last week for the first time this year. So maybe we'll throw Bailey Zappi in there for over 200. Maybe it's a bigger offensive game for the Patriots than we think with the 32 ranked defense of the Detroit Lions. And I'm taking Ramondre Stevenson, over 16.5 receiving yards. The last 2 weeks, he's had almost 30 receiving yards in both games. So there's no reason why he doesn't continue that, especially with a rookie quarterback in. They tend to do those short little passes to get a little confidence in, whether that's a swing pass to the running back or that's a little tight end screen what have you. They're not going to go super deep most of the time. Bailey will take some shots for sure. But to build the confidence, especially in the beginning of the game, they're doing those screen passes. They're getting the flow going. They just want to get the chains moving. So I'll take in Ramondre Stevenson over 16.5 receiving yards as well. So that is where I'm at with the bets for this week. Any questions, any lineup questions we have before we close out? Take a drink here. My voice is going out. Oh, man. And this hit here was insane. This hit on Kelsey was a fun one to see. I like to see those hits. As long as they're clean hits, no one's getting hurt, I'll take those big hits all week. But I'll also save this in case you guys want to go through and review it. It's there. I'll upload it to my YouTube, which is the same as my Twitch name. It's just DJ Was Here 44. I have a playlist with all my Saturday night selections in there. So if you want to review them and see, you know, how if I was on, if I was off, they're there. I'm telling you, for the most part, pretty on. My one bust last week was definitely Josh Jacobs. Apologize there. But going against Denver's rush defense, which was, you know, for the first 3 weeks, one of the best in the league, against a horrible Josh Jacobs for the first 3 weeks, it didn't match up. But, you know, they can have a breakthrough game somehow. But if no questions on lineups, I think we'll wrap it up. So I appreciate you guys. We definitely had some more activity in the chat this week and some more people popping in, some new faces. So I appreciate you guys. I've been doing this, you know, every week. This is my 5th week. Next week we'll have our first week with buys in there, so it'll be a little bit more interesting. Maybe we'll look through the waiver wire a little bit if you need someone to kind of put in there and take away from or fill in a spot if someone's on a buy. We can do that as well. So with that being said, appreciate you guys. Have a lovely Saturday. And catch the London game at 6 a.m. if you're an early bird. And if you are a normal person, start watching football at 10 o'clock. So, thanks, guys. Catch you later. Bye-bye.